a teacher at Garden Bullis lead us in the religions?
Oh my goodness. Right hand over your heart. Really want me to? Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Good job, Ms. Wiley. On the spot. Phew.
You pass.
Are there any community comments for items that are not on the agenda?
Ready now?
Yeah.
Okay. So good evening. I would like to encourage the board to direct staff to analyze Eastbrook as a potential site for teacher housing and instruct their current law firm, and if their current law firm can't handle the project, then find a different lawyer, maybe with eminent domain background and use of land for public good, to analyze the use of that site and the district reacquiring that site before you sell the land for $1. Thank you.
Okay.
So, I want to welcome Joe Hurd, Chair of the BCS Board of Directors, to our meeting. Joe, do you want to
Sure.
introduce your
Hi,
colleague?
sure, thanks a lot, Jeff. Good evening, everybody. My name is Joe Hurd, and I'm this year's chair of the BCS Bullis Charter School Board of Directors. Joining me today is David Jacques, who is right here, obviously.
I'm one of the vice chairs of the current Bullis Charter School Board. And thank you for the reciprocity in inviting us back. We enjoyed having Mr. Ivanovich and Mr. Johnson at our board meeting last Monday, so appreciate the opportunity to come back. I know that some of the points of interest that you had asked us to speak about were around growth intent, site desire, single site versus different site configurations, and those type of matters. So there's certain information that we can share with you, but as you're probably aware, the Prop 39 deadline is coming up on November 1st, so we are pretty deep into a Prop 39 application that we are going to be submitting by November 1st deadline. The final details of that have not been completely finalized, so we're unable to talk about anything too specific, but we can talk about very general terms and anything which is public. And I think the first thing we'll probably talk about is growth.
Sure. Okay, so as I think we're all aware, we're in the final year of the 5-year negotiated agreement between LASD and BCS. Can everybody hear me? When we entered the agreement, BCS agreed to cap its enrollment during this year, the 5th year, at 900 with a 5% allowed buffer. That gives you a max of 945. The current configuration for this year is we have 4 classes in grades 4 through 8 and 5 classes in grades K through 3, and that totals 915 students for this year. The overwhelming majority of the students are in district, and we'll be providing the exact figures on October 15th as agreed in the 5-year agreement. Don't want to front run any official release. But in terms of, for the enrollment figures over the past 5 years, 2014, 2015, according to CDE DataQuest, BCS enrollment was 707 students. We had agreed in the term sheet to be at 711. We were underneath. The next year, 2015 to 2016, enrollment was 744. Per the agreement, 786, so about 40 or so underneath. 2016, 2017, enrollment 825. Per the agreement, 831. 17, 18, 879. Per the agreement, 875. And then this year, as I said, 915. Per the agreement, 900. I believe, thank you very much, LASD, for releasing your enrollment data for this current year. I think it stands at 4,243, if my reading is exact, and that's about 757 students short of what we agreed in the 5-year agreement. The agreement was that projected enrollment 5 years would be 5,000 per the agreement, and you're coming in 757 short of that. The point of this is, we've been pretty good, I think, we feel, about and being very transparent about what our enrollment growth projections are and what numbers we're going to hit. I don't see that changing in the coming years. I'll get to that in a few minutes. As many of you know, we have an open enrollment process that's going on now. Once open enrollment closes on October 12th, we'll decide on our enrollment targets for the next year, and we'll be able to provide you with more specific numbers for the Proposition 39 submission. Interest remains incredibly high for open enrollment at BCS, and I just wanted to take this moment to extend my kudos to Winnie Hersey, our founding superintendent principal, and the school staff for running an excellent open enrollment process. I would also encourage any families that are interested in BCS to apply. Now, there's been a lot of talk about our stated plans to grow to 1,200 students that I'd like to discuss. There's been a lot of misinformation put out both in public sessions and in private, and I'd like to make a few things perfectly clear about where we stand over the next 2 or 3 years and what our approach to growth is. First off, speaking for myself only and not for the rest of the board, because we do have a divergence of views on the board. I believe that every parent who wants to choose a BCS education for their child should be able to do so. As a public school, it pains me to turn away in-district families who want their child to attend BCS. I don't feel that it's right. Because our waiting list exceeds our facilities allotment, we have made it clear for the past several months that we plan to grow to 1,200 students over the next 3 to 5 years to help meet this demand. We are currently well on track to hit that growth target, and even so, we'll still have hundreds of people, perhaps over 1,000, on our wait list. We won't know the exact amounts, as I said earlier, until open enrollment closes. It's a shame that taxpayers in this district cannot have their choice of educational model, but here's what we've done. On March 16th, 2018, John Phelps, our former board chair, sent a letter to Shelley Lapkoff, who's the demographer hired by LASD. We volunteered this information even though we were not asked to participate in the process, and we very clearly said, and I quote, "Given the high demand and our desire to serve more of these families, we presently expect that our enrollment will grow to approximately 1,200 students in the next 3 to 5 years, starting with the 2019-2020 school year." On May 14th, the demographer made a presentation to you that included these enrollment projections. On page 2 of the deck, I have it right here. Demographers wrote that BCS is approaching its 900 student limit. They told us they intend to grow by 300 students starting in fall 2019. On May 16th, we sent a letter to our community about growth. And in our 2018-2019 budget submitted to the county, again, public document, we included our enrollment projections in the out years. And finally, we started open enrollment last month. We publicized in our announcements and advertisers and in local papers that there will be more classes. So the idea that BCS has not been transparent about its growth plans, or that LASD has not been on notice about our growth plans, I think is a little misleading. Quite simply, it's not true. The issue is not BCS growing willy-nilly. No one is forcing families to register their child at our school. They're making a choice of the educational model that best fits their child. The school's going to grow, and we're going to try and serve as much demand as we can. And I think everybody in our community is quite proud of it. We have another one of the topics was location, and in terms of BCS's location with General versus North of El Camino. My colleague David Jacques has a few thoughts on it.
So currently we're located on 2 campuses, and we've got roughly about 1/3 of the current year student population are at the South Campus and about 2/3 at the North Campus. And not only is it fiscally inefficient to have to run 2 campuses, it puts a huge burden on our teachers. Not the homeroom teachers, because the homeroom teachers are located in specific rooms at the specific campus, but we have a number of specialists that have to spend time driving 3 to 4 miles between each of those locations to be able to spend their day. So it uses a lot of their time. It uses energy. Classes could start late if they get caught in traffic. And then from a fiscal standpoint, running 2 campuses is more costly. We need 2 on-site nurses, we need 2 janitorial services, we need 2 sets of office staff. And so there's a lot of duplication that we have that we wouldn't have at one single site.
Fantastic. But certainly, in order to give a fully informed proposal about our location and facilities requirements, we've been asking for quite some time for the LASD school site facilities inventory. That's come up in our mediation meetings, that's come up in one-on-one conversations with the trustees. The inventory is pretty important because it shows the type and size of facilities at each site. And that is required for us, necessary for us to help inform our discussions regarding site preference and facilities issues. So as LASD has grown and added facilities to their various sites, and as we try and look at what our requirements are to match our growth in the out years. Having that basic inventory, I think it will come out as part of the Prop 39 process, will be helpful in order to help us give you more targeted information so we can have a fruitful conversation about facilities. In terms of NEC, North of El Camino, the 10th site, and I believe that's on the agenda for discussion tonight. As I mentioned, the projections for LASD 5 years ago for 5,000 students in district this year, and those numbers apparently haven't been hit with the enrollment. Should BCS grow to over 1,000 students next year, that'll be about 20% or so of the total. The proposed site in Mountain View will give LASD 126 total acres, and the Mountain View specific site, the 10th site, will be less than 8% of that total. We can speculate about what's going to happen many years from now, but for the next few years, I think BCS is going to be growing, and I don't know if the same can be said for LASD enrollment. Students at BCS already enjoy 50% less space than their district peers. When we take 2017-2018 enrollment figures, we have that data as well. I'm happy to share it. What doesn't make sense to me is to try and squeeze BCS, the largest school, onto the NEC site, which is the smallest site, when we all know those facilities won't be sufficient for that number of K-8 students. Instead of perhaps a smaller K-5 school that will more easily fit on the site and provide a neighborhood school similar to those throughout the rest of the district. Do you want to talk about configuration? Okay, no problem. In terms of configuration, the board has stated for years, since at least 2013, back when BCS and LASD had a meeting at the community center. Steve, you might remember that. I was wearing a yellow sweater sitting right across from you. And still have the picture framed right on my end. And we talked to you then, and we've been quite consistent since then, that really in terms of configuration, what we're looking for were 3 criteria. A single site in a central location with facilities that were reasonably equivalent to run our program. Given that we're going to head into Prop 39, we're quite open to hearing the district's alternative proposals to house a growing BCS, given the strong community demand. It'd be great, as we talk and discuss in Prop 39, if LASD could be specific about how many students any proposed solution could accommodate under the standards. I think we both have the same goal, which is let's do what makes sense for our respective school models and what's best for all public school students in the district. But in terms of more specifics there, we'll have to leave that to the Prop 39 negotiating team, since they will be going through that process as required by law. We talked about 2 sites being rather demanding on facility. In terms of the longer term topics, reasonably equivalent facilities, I think that's going to be, again, a larger conversation between the parties. But I really do look, I was very heartened, and I should have said this at the top, I apologize, Vladimir and Brian, for you coming to our meeting last week and taking questions and having a conversation with our board. We're here to do the same in full transparency and good spirit. And I do look forward to a number of conversations between the 2 boards, both as part of the Prop 39 process, where there will be the formal exchange of information, but also informally, or I guess more formally, through attendance at each other's meetings. I think that spirit of cooperation and collaboration is important to set a good tone for the town. I think it's important to set a good tone for our students, and it's important to begin to repair some of the hard feelings of the past. And I really do appreciate you giving us some time tonight.
Thank you. Any comments?
Did I miss anything? Anything else?
I guess.
Sorry?
Is that it?
Sure. Yeah. All right, yeah, that's it.
Okay, I have 2 members of the public who want to give community comment, 3 minutes each. Nisha Agarwal,
Yes,
right?
Nisha.
And Jacques, okay, and the 3rd person will be James, right? Okay, so those 3, 2 minutes each, and then I'll bring the other people.
Thank you. I want to start out with thanking the board for the service that you provide to the community here. As I get, sorry, should I wait? As I get more and more informed and engaged as a resident of Los Altos, I'm beginning to grow my appreciation for the kind of work you guys do and what it takes to run the quality education that all of the schools here provide to our children.
I'm a parent of two daughters, one in 5th grade and one in 2nd grade. We spent 4 years at Loyola and 1 year at Bullis, entering our 2nd year here. So I have sort of a perspective on both sides, and it's interesting because when I applied to Bullis, I did not really, I was ignorant to the dynamics and the issues that are existing between the community. But it was interesting because my friends would ask me, so how is it? How is the Bullis experience? And I said, well, the education is very similar. I would say, you know, both the schools provide excellent education, but for various reasons, we've enjoyed the enrollment, or we've enjoyed the experience for our daughters because of, let's say, the art program or the drama program, or let's say. But essentially that the spirit and the education provided on both is very similar. However, I felt as if when we got to the Bullis side, there was like a bee I was wearing on my back. And I didn't realize that that would be the sort of, I went off to the dark side or something like that. So it's an interesting feeling that I came across, and then I started to dig up and try to understand what's causing this community angst, right? And it saddened me to see that that's what's happening, and in particular it saddened me to understand that it's been so divisive for our community. And I was glad to see when Brian and Vladimir came last time to the Bullis board meeting, and we started to see the spirit of collaboration and community, you know, to work together to solve this problem. One of the things that, so I tried to dig around to figure out why is it that we're, have this big bee on my back, right? And I started to learn that perhaps there's a perception that Bullis, sorry, what was that?
Finish up. That was your 2 minutes.
Oh my God.
Okay,
I need to time this. So my 4 points,
One more
I'm not going to
sentence.
make it. Okay. I think I'll make my 5th point because I think the 10 site would be a terrible disaster for us. I'll make more comments on the 10 site part. But the main reason being crime and the safety for our children, and it's a commercial site, which makes no sense for our school. I didn't
Thank you.
realize I'd run out of 3 minutes that fast.
Thank you. By the way, everybody is encouraged to submit written comments via email or snail mail or whatever it is. So if you haven't had a chance to speak here, write it down and send it to us, and it becomes part of the public record, and we read them.
Thank you, guys. I'm LASD parent from Covington. First, I want to say I'm from Singapore, and I found Covington's teaching quality is equivalent to the best private school in Singapore, which I'm really grateful. The points I want to make is that the enrollment numbers should be looked at as its entirety of Los Altos districts. Obviously, BCS is taking students away from LASD, and the students on BCS waiting list are also enrolled to LASD. Even if BCS is in demand, the Los Altos community doesn't want a monster school that adds traffic jams, safety risks to our neighborhood, which is a direct threat, right, to our children who walk and bike to school. We choose LASD because the space our students enjoy, and we want to keep the neighborhood school characters and not lower our standards. And if BCS wants to continue to grow, please find your own side and run as a private school. BCS, if you want to run as a charter school, you should stay true to what a charter school is meant to be. Number 1, serving the underperforming and gifted children. Number 2, be a supplement to the public school system. It should not disrupt a high-performing school district. It should not compete with home schools for funding and facilities, and it should refrain itself from a monster school against the wishes of Los Altos community. So whatever the solutions are, both BCS and LASD needs to put the entire school district and its community's interest as first priority. BCS's gain should not be built on top of any other school's loss. For young children to thrive, they need to have a trusting relationship with the school environment, with their teachers and their school friends. To move the students away from any of the schools, especially this outstanding school district, will no question disrupt and damage children's learning progress and their well-being in the long run. It will also, as I mentioned, huge traffic and safety risk to the neighborhood. But I appreciate, right, both BCS and LASD are willing to work together, but I just want to make sure that we think of the entire community's wish, not one school's gain built on top of other schools' loss. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to comment that you win the award for fastest speaker in the history of LASD that I know of. Congratulations.
Hi, I'm Jim Chai, a resident and parent in this district. So I'm really encouraged the cooperative dialogue happening between the district and the BCS and the BCS parent. So I'm really glad for it. But I do have a concern about the process. So read some of the news report regarding the 10th school site and task force. It seems the recommendation made by task force was mainly focused on the positions of each party instead of addressing the interests. So that doesn't seem to be productive. And by the district reps outnumbering BCS or Mountain rep by 6-1, I'm not sure how we get any meaningful consensus through the process. So I'm curious how you, as a board, how you make decision based on that kind of recommendation. How you can convince not only the district, including the BCS and the Mountain View, your decision will be sensible and credible. So, like I said, very appreciate the meaningful dialogue. But we all remember what happened in the past. BCS, someone pit BCS against the district. And divide, conquer, use that kind of tactic. And we all lose. Remember what happened before. Years of acrimony, controversy, lawsuit, glad it's over. But we're in the new negotiation period. So it's so critical. We need to have that dialogue based on productive process. So I'd like to hear from board. What is your process on this board? How you make decisions? What is the timeline? And I will speak more about the 10th side in the next topic. Thank you.
Thank you. And you are?
Stella?
Yeah, Stella, and then could we have Jean Zong and Natalie Elfine?
Hi, good evening. My name is Stella Keister, and I have been a Covington parent for 2.5 years, and I only been a BCS parent for 2 years. And I'm not a long-term resident in Los Altos. I only been here for 4 or 5 years, and I have moved from Woodside, and my kids used to go to Woodside Elementary School. And I have to say, we live in a bubble, okay? There's no crime. There's no, because my true passion, why I'm saying this, my true passion is, I have been volunteer in the East Palo Alto, the Ravenswood School District for the past 5 years. I'm there every Monday because they don't have a library. They don't have a library resources. I go out and get my kids' old books to those libraries. Kids come to school with bullet casing in their pocket as toys. Okay, I understand. And Woodside and East Palo Alto also have their Tinsley program, and they do try to mix up the diversity in terms of socioeconomic status. And those kids, they get bused up all the way from East Palo Alto to Woodside to Portola Valley. They get up at 7 o'clock in the morning. They have to be on the bus at 7, and they won't get home until 5. Okay, and I've been to some of the previous discussion. I see some of the LASD board members been talking about mixing up on the social dynamics. And then you have to realize some of this family, low-income family, they don't have 2 cars at home. They share 1 car with grandma, grandpa. If that car breaks down today, no kids is going to school that day. So we should get off on our, it's great lofty goal that we try to balance, try to create the diversity. But the goal is trying to get kids to school. I'm trying to help one of the kids because he has so many bed bug spikes on his arm, he couldn't even sit down and read a book. Those are the issues I'm trying to address. And we don't have those type of kids here.
Thank you very much.
All right, I'll consider, I'll talk about that.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having this meeting today and inviting the public. And I live like 3 minutes walk from Covington, so I have 2 kids here, 4th grade and 6th grade. And I heard the history about Bullis Charter and the LASD, and I think it was an original mistake, like the LASD closed the garden bullies. more than 10 years ago. And I think what charter school like Bullis Charter is asking is making the same mistake by closing a neighborhood school just to fit in their school. And it's just, I feel like if you are a result of a mistake, why do you want to repeat the mistake? That's my first point. And the second point is why Bullis Charter has to grow 300 kids every 3 to 5 years. I just don't see the reason. They said they have a bigger waiting list. Like I heard is they encourage everybody in Los Altos school, like Los Altos, like a school district, to be on their waiting list. Because people in here just say, hey, just be on the waiting list and take a lottery, but if I don't get in, I can always go to the public school. But that doesn't mean everybody really care whether they are going to win the lottery or not. They just put their name there. So the quality of LASD schools are as good as the charter school. And we see Covington has an even better score this year than Bullis Charter. So why do they think people really want to go to charter school instead of the neighborhood school? I didn't even apply because I feel walking to a neighborhood school is more valuable for the families. And also, they said, oh, they feel hurt when they see people on the waiting list that cannot get into the school. But I think if you grow 300 kids every 3 to 5 years, it's not even good for your own school, for your own kids. How do you maintain the quality of your education? Like all the private school you heard, like Harper, Menlo, Castelia, they have even bigger waiting list. They didn't grow 300 kids every 3 to 5 years. That's
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excuse me, no clapping, no booing, no noise. I don't want anybody to breathe.
We know you, Natalie.
My name's Natalie Elephant. I'm a community member. I just want to say I'm very happy that our two boards are meeting with each other and in public, and so the community knows what's happening. I understand and appreciate what the BCS board wants for their students in their school, but I also want the BCS community to understand what is important to the LASD community also. Our small neighborhood schools is what has really made Los Altos an exceptional school district. And so I'm hoping that the two boards can work together and can understand where we're both coming from. The BCS wants one site, and it's a possibility that you'll get the one site. It may not be as large as you want, but we all have to compromise in life. So I just want the boards to keep talking and to make the best decision for all the kids that we're serving. Thanks.
Is that it for comments? Yes. All right, it's time for board discussion. I was thinking of going in inverse order of good looks.
So you should go first.
I'm going to go last. Sang, you want to go first?
Sure. First of all, just want to thank you guys for coming. Really appreciate that. It seemed like a productive meeting when Brian and Vladimir went, so very appreciative of that. And I think it's great for the community when we're working collaboratively. Want to thank everyone that came with their comments today. Very helpful. I guess the main question I had is just to educate us a little bit. The lottery is not something that we run at LASD, so I guess I would be curious if you could help us understand the timeline a little bit. I think you said October 12th is when the lottery takes place, is that right?
No, I believe open enrollment closes on October 12th, and the lottery is scheduled. I think we have some staff.
Joe,
Sorry?
could you?
Oh,
Otherwise, it doesn't get recorded.
no problem. Want to list all your questions now and I hit them one by one, or am I going to be a jumping jack guy?
If you just want to stay up there.
Yeah, you guys
Stand up. Yeah, last time I thought I'd try and sit down in between, I was back and forth. Okay, go ahead, so the lottery. So, open enrollment closes October 12th.
Okay.
Lottery happens October 13th.
Okay. And then after that, kind of what's
Can I
the,
call on staff if I need to?
yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
okay.
So the lottery ends, okay, 10/12, or sorry, open enrollment 10/12, your lottery 10/13. Then what is the process after that? When do you communicate with parents that they've been accepted? And then when do parents have to accept the acceptance or not?
It's a good question. So since these are operational programmatic details, what I can certainly do is, if you want to give me the question and we can respond later with a written explanation, that'd be perfectly fine, rather than call people in from the audience. But we can certainly come back to you with the process. I'm not involved in the ops, or at least in the lottery ops. That's handled by the staff, and we can get that answer to you shortly.
Okay. I'll have a few more questions, but Jessica, if you want to go,
I'm okay right now.
Steve or Glenn?
I was wondering, you talked a little bit about, David, you talked a little bit about financial inefficiency and wanting to sort of consolidate. Do you guys have I mean, you obviously, at this point, we all know all of the sites and their sizes in our district. Do you have a sense of what the maximum capacity would be for you? At which point you just basically have to split up because of traffic or space or any other considerations?
I don't think it's necessarily number dependent. And with the numbers that we have currently, we're by virtue of what's been granted to us, we are on 2 sites. We've made that work. It's been, I'm not saying it's disastrous, but it's just not the top desire to be split onto more than one site.
Sure. So your position is that however large you get, you'd be happy on a single site?
Preference would be a single site.
Okay.
Okay, so even if it's 12, 15, 1,800 students, it's like a mega site is kind of the ideal model. That's what you want.
Again, preference is a single site. That's about all I can really say.
Okay.
I think, so if I can jump in, saying part of we have not agendized single site versus multiple sites. It's never been the subject of a public conversation between the board or involving our parents, staff, and community.
Okay.
Those conversations have always been held as part of a Proposition 39 process, which, as you know, is relatively constrained. So I would suspect, you were talking about in the future and with growth. I would suspect that as we had a better sense after 1,200, and what the growth trajectory looked like for the school, that would be part of a public conversation and an inter-board conversation and board staff conversation, and we would come back then with that guidance.
I have a question. Did you bring the growth of 1,200 to your parents and staff up?
As a matter of fact, I did, Jessica. I think, as you recall, we did say that we sent a letter out to our community, as well as having a conversation with the demographer. That's been a topic that's been out there for the last 6 months.
Did you bring it up before you sent it to the demographer?
I'd have to get back to you on that. John Phelps was the board chair at the time, and I'd have to go back and ask exactly what the TikTok was.
Okay.
Okay?
So I was a little, when you were talking about the growth, you started out by talking, you personally, you don't want to turn away any students. And then I think your comments shifted to we. And then just now you said we haven't had agendized for single site versus multi-site. But earlier you said in your comments the preference is single site simplification. So is that agendized then? Is that the official BCS stance?
Yeah,
Can I take that?
Yeah, back in 2013, Ken Moore was the chair at the time, and we had a rather extensive strategy. We had a strategy group composed of staff, parents, board members. That was extensively discussed at the time. This was before we made the decision
or agreed to split into 2 sites. There was a lot of discussion back then, so that's what I was referring to in terms of what the school's longstanding public position has always been: single site, centrally located, reasonably equivalent facilities.
Okay, and then
We've not had to revisit it in 6 years, which is the conversations that we're starting now.
that makes sense, that's helpful.
Okay.
And then the 1,200, is that similarly, that was something that you guys agendized and discussed at a board meeting? Or is that something that doesn't need to be agendized? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, but we'll come back to you.
One thing I would say is that from a budget standpoint, we have a finance committee, which is a subcommittee of the board, which is subject to the Brown Act and is open to the public. And we've had discussions in that committee about what a budget would look like. We've done a couple of models there for internal use, so it's not actually information that I can share, and the finance committee has made recommendations to the board. So yes, it has been discussed in the context of subcommittee recommendations.
Steve, you want to say anything?
I'm not quite sure how to phrase this, so I'm going to stumble around a little bit, so I apologize. I'm hearing there's been a lot of discussion internally. Some of that is not shareable. As someone who has to provide you facilities you can't turn facilities on and off with a water tap. It's hard for us to shift things around. The more advanced notice we can get, or including us in those conversations in the future, would be helpful. Flagging to my demographer you're intending to grow is a tough way to communicate with me. I found out about that months after the fact, not at the time, because those reports didn't come to us right away. So I think back to a communication issue, flow issue, it would be helpful if we were more engaged with each other. And that's all I'm asking for, is that if you've got, it sounds like a lot of work's going on and a lot of thought processes going on around this 1,200 growth. As I said, it's just hard for us to reconfigure schools quickly to get you all on one campus. It's hard for us to do that kind of lift. We have to go back to a whole different public policy. That can take years. It's not a month-long discussion. It's a years-long discussion sometimes. So the earlier you can signal to us in the future, the better off I think we'll all be. I mean, the better off we'll be able to have these conversations in a way that's meaningful. So that's my whole comment.
I appreciate that. I know it's not the time or the place for me to ask questions back to the board, but I appreciate your comment and thank you very much for making this time.
Yeah, just piggyback on that. The demographer's comment, you mentioned, 1,200 over 3 to 5 years. That's hard for planning, right? Whether it's 3 years, whether it's 5, what cadence does it grow? What configurations? There's a lot more that goes into planning. Brian said this before, children are not widgets. And so, we want to be thoughtful. We want to think about the whole community. We want to think about BCS students. We want to think about LASD students and the families as a whole. And we know that there's a Prop 39 process, but if we wait until the Prop 39 process, that becomes really hard. And so if you wait that long, what happens is either it's more costly, or you can't have as good facilities, or you're sacrificing one versus the other. That Prop 39 process is not ideal for BCS or LASD, and so that just makes it really hard for planning.
Okay. Was that a question or a statement?
Do you understand that?
Did you hear me?
Yeah, I apologize. Yeah, Brian, you were about to say something, I think?
Yeah, no, well, I was going to say, I think we were ourselves remiss in thanking Joe and David for coming, so we should have started that with comments on top, so apologies. Thank you for coming. I do look forward to future collaboration and in the future. I mean, just to echo what Sang said, right, if we have to shift attendance boundaries around, as we've seen Mountain View Wisman right next door do, that was essentially an 18-month, 2-year process. So I just want to set everybody's expectations. We hear that you want a single site, but we've got to go through a long process to make sure that we do everything really thoughtfully. So
completely understood.
I'd like to echo Brian's, and I'm sure Steve's, Jessica, and Sang's. Thank you for coming.
No, I have more questions.
Oh, okay.
So, Joe, in the beginning of your comments, you said you personally want to grow as much as you can, and that pains you, but you said there was not consensus on the board around that, and there appear to be some different viewpoints. I guess I was just curious a little bit, when you're going through your growth process, how does that work? Do you survey students or parents or teachers trying to understand, do they want to grow? How do you balance, the needs of current families versus new families? And I guess I am curious around what is the process for the board to decide if you're growing or not, because that helps us for our planning, right? If we know that you have to agendize a board meeting and you have to go through feedback and get surveys, et cetera, then we know, hey, BCS has this on their calendar, they're going to agendize growth, they're going to talk about it, and then we have that time in advance. I'm just kind of curious, how does that process work? What constituents are you considering when you think about growth? What is the work done? That sort of thing.
Yep. Great question. Again, that's something that, having stepped into the board chair's role relatively recently, about 3 weeks ago, I'd like to take the time to talk to staff and come back to you with an answer on that.
I'm just talking about historically. What have you guys done historically? I believe you've been on the board for a while now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious, what do you guys historically do to think about growth? Is this, which, and who are the constituents? Is it parents? Is it students? Is it teachers, families, community? How does that work?
Yeah, we have, and I believe it's annual, if not biannual, strategy team that meets.
Okay.
The strategy team is comprised of representative samples of parents, staff, and board members.
Okay.
And that strategy team takes a look at all the school's operations from top to bottom.
Okay.
That includes curriculum, facilities, demand, growth, and strategy team makes a recommendation to the board.
Okay.
So I don't know whether it's to the board or to staff. I believe it's a staff group, a staff group that's convened by the principal. The question you're asking calls for specifics that I don't have right now. So rather than sit up here and filibuster, I'd like to come back to you with a specific answer, and I can certainly talk to staff, talk to board chairs, and come back to you with a more cogent answer of exactly how it's been approached and addressed.
That makes sense. And then does the staff recommendation end up going to the board, and then you guys discuss that, or?
Yeah, like I said, those are the operational details. I'm not trying to evade, but I want to make sure that whatever I say in public is the right answer, and I don't want to have to correct. So I understand the gist of your question. We can come back to you on that.
Okay, that's helpful. All right, that's all I really had.
Again, thank you. One of the things I think is really important is for us to continue these conversations. I think the only way to do things is to talk. And I would encourage all of us to continue conversing, continue exchanging ideas, continue.
I think we're on a pretty good cadence so far.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for
I'd like
coming.
to add one caution if you want. I don't think the right way to communicate 1,200 students is through the democracy. You need to bring it to us in some fashion or other and say, this is 1,200 students, this is what we would like to do. Go ahead.
Vladimir, did you or anybody from the LASD ask BCS, as you had instructed the demographer to complete your report, what BCS's growth plans were? Did anybody from this board ask us?
No. Okay, so I think we're both deficient. We
Right.
didn't ask you and you didn't offer.
So thank you for acknowledging that, because the way you described it was, we didn't come to you. It's a two-way street. That's what this conversation is all about.
Yes, no, what I said actually, what I meant was that I would like an official notification of your desires. I don't want it to come through some roundabout channel. That's what I was after. It's not who started it and who, that's all.
I think we'll be covering that in the Prop 31
Okay.
submission.
You mentioned in your comments in the beginning about having board members be present at the other group's board meetings.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
It's hard for me to articulate without saying D. And one of us would attend your board meetings, one of your board members would attend our meetings. Is that Did I misunderstand you?
Did I say that tonight? I don't think
I
so.
thought
You
so.
just said that it'd be great to, one of our ways of collaborating or whatever is to have one of us go to go to each other's board meetings. One of you did say that. I'm not,
Okay, so your point being, I'm more than happy,
Yeah.
more than happy to, we can discuss exactly what the format is or the tenor is, but yes, should the two boards be talking more, by all means.
Okay.
The board meetings are public, anyone can come to our board
we're
meeting.
not, I'm sorry if this got accusatory, I was just backing him up. I heard you say it, I'm sorry.
And I think that, we have had a number of BCS board members who have come to the LASD meetings in the past, but they've been ad hoc, they haven't been on a scheduled basis.
Okay. The one thing I would comment is that we both have our board meetings on Monday nights. And I don't care to toss a coin to see who changes their board meeting. But we can't have board meetings on the same day if we want a board member to attend the other person's board meeting. So I'm happy to leave that to your staff and our staff to work that out, or we could have a very public toss of the coin.
You could do alternating.
By all means, I appreciate that suggestion.
I guess that's all the questions I have. Any last minute comments from anybody?
I have a little bit to say. I just wanted to, reiterate what Brian said. Really thank you for coming tonight. Thank you also for the collaboration we have had over the years. I helped pass Measure N after the 5-year agreement was signed in order to make sure that BCS got a better home. And I also we worked together to pass Measure GG just 2 years ago. And that was the renewal of the parcel tax plus a pro rata portion for you. And I did that because it was a right thing to do. It was a right thing to heal our community, to continue collaborating with BCS. And I really look forward to continuing the collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe, and thank you, David.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you, guys. We'll be in touch about the other stuff.
So those of you who want to go home and do homework, now's the time.
Wrong way around.